Hello everyone, hope all of you are doing good. So we have already entered the second week and today is the last day of Indian political thought, and from tomorrow onwards we are going to start Indian government and politics. Congratulations for completing section A. If you have been truly honest and disciplined, I'm sure that all of you are feeling more confident from June 17th when we had started, okay? Chalo. So we are almost 1 month done with our program very successfully, and we shall continue the series for you just like this. All right? Fine. So let's move. The highest application of these thinkers, right, is there with respect to political science also, with respect to GS, with respect to essay. Gandhi and Ambedkar, day 17. So what all aspects of Gandhi you have to study? Obviously, okay, his influences, his work, his idea of man, his idea of society, ahimsa, how he brings in the continuity between means and ends, okay. Then his concept of Swatyagraha, right. Then Swaraj, Sarvodaya, what he says of trusteeship, what views he holds on economy, then his views on modernity and civilization, his concepts of rights and duties, his view on religion, right, and the linkage between religion and politics, his views on the state, the Gram Swaraj, views on education, how he differs with Marx, all right, Gandhism as an ideology also, and the relevance of this today, okay. So very comprehensively it is important because it can be applied anywhere, specifically in essay and ethics, all right. And Ambedkar has been asked very frequently now. So yes, his life history, you have to historically know what is the steps he had taken, how he had thought, how he got involved, all right, in the movement for the oppressed classes, his works, his influences, the depressed classes movement that he has led, his views on religion, right, Hinduism, his views on Buddhism, then his views on caste, his views on untouchability, what is the difference between Gandhi and Ambedkar, what are the present debates saying about the relevance of these differences academically, okay, how he is a champion of human rights, what is his concept of social justice, comparing it with Rawls, views on democracy, his idea of constitutionalism already been asked and it is very applicable in paper 2 as well, okay, role as architect of the Constitution of India, his views on state, what he thinks about Marxism and state socialism, okay. So comprehensively this has to be covered. So we brought in a very unique question today, okay, I'm sure that you would have not seen this kind of a question anyway, because how you synchronize the ideas, okay, to teach that art, I have given this question because it is based more on interpretation. So let's see what this question is about. So the question reads, if India is to evolve along non-violent lines, it will have to decentralize because centralization as a system is inconsistent with a non-violent structure of society. Comment. It's a 20-mark question. So question is reading, if India has to evolve. Let's deconstruct first. Question is reading, if India has to evolve. I'll just take the question for you. Okay, it's reading, if India is to evolve along non-violent line, okay, it will have to do what? Decentralization. Decentralization, right? Because there is a problem with the idea of centralization. There is a problem with the idea of centralization. I'll show you how to link components to find out what is the underlying idea, okay. In such questions only we know whether you have understood the thinker very well or no, okay. Because centralization is inconsistent with what structure? Non-violent structure of society. Okay? Now, what is it that you have to understand in this question? So firstly, understand that he is talking of a non-violent structure of society, okay? Which means what are the key principles that come out from this question? The first principle that come out from this particular question is that how truth and non-violence is very, very key cardinal principles. Actually, these two principles are the principles which are linked with every idea that Gandhiji is talking about. So they are like those golden pillars on the basis of which you will find consistency in the entire thought process of Gandhiji. Okay? So first idea is truth and violence. Now what is this decentralization and centralization? What do we do? What does centralization mean? Centralization is of what? Centralization or decentralization is always associated with which idea? It is always associated with power and its forms. Okay? So power can be in various forms. It can be in the form of political power. It can be in the form of economic power that he is talking of. Okay? Right? Now, so are we going to talk only about non-violence in this question, or are we only going to talk about how centralization is problematic and how decentralization of power in the political realm and economic realm helps? Is this the only aspects of the question that we will address? No. In this question, we will bring all the key thoughts of Gandhiji, okay, and show that how non-violence, truth and decentralization of power is embedded in everything that he is talking of. Okay? So firstly, we have to understand that what is Gandhiji's objective? What is Gandhiji's objective? So he is saying, what is he trying to synthesize? Okay? So he is trying to give a coherent vision. So his tradition, we call that he gives this synthetic vision. What is synthetic vision? Even Aurobindo was giving synthesis, right? We call him a great synthesizer. What was Aurobindo synthesizing? Aurobindo was synthesizing, right, the East and the West, the spiritualism that is there in the Indian society, the materialism, the dichotomies that are there in the West, and he was trying to synthesize. Okay. On the other hand, what is Gandhiji synthesizing? He is synthesizing the idea of the coherent vision of man and his link with society. And he is trying to do this for which man? Okay. So rather than doing it at the philosophical level, Gandhiji is trying to do this synthesis for the common man. So whatever prevalent ideologies have been there, he is trying to synthesize this at the lowest level of the section for the masses, and that's why even his national movement was, despite the cleavages that were existing in Indian society along different lines, he brought them, he made a coherence in them, he synthesized them and turned it into a mass movement. So first concept that we will be talking about in this question is what is his key objective? That he is trying to provide the coherent vision of individual and society and trying to synthesize it. And this he is not doing at the philosophical level, he is doing this at the level of the common man, for the masses. And in this regard, the key cardinal principles of Gandhi's vision are truth and non-violence. Truth and non-violence. Okay? Now, so the first idea, right, that we will be talking about is his concept of truth and violence. Truth and violence. Sorry, truth and non-violence. And non-violence. All right. So what does he mean by truth? What is truth for Gandhi? So he says there is a relative truth and there is an absolute truth. And who is the truth? Absolute truth is the reality, okay? And he equates truth with whom? He equates truth with God. He equates truth with God, okay? Now, when we talk about ahimsa, non-violence, okay, he considers it as the greatest principle of mankind, okay? It is love, it is activity, right? And having that kind of compassion for all individuals in his concept of non-violence, all right? Now, why is he propagating these two principles? When we say these are the key principles, how does it help man? Okay, it helps man to achieve what? To achieve Swaraj. And is his Swaraj only confined to the political freedom like his predecessors had said? No, because he wants Swaraj at the individual level, at the internal level of the individual, okay, the inner self, which means man will have complete rule over himself. That is his concept of Swaraj. So this truth and non-violence are important. Why? For every individual to achieve Swaraj. So in this question, right, first we talk about the key perspective that guides Gandhiji, how he tries to provide this coherent vision, and the two principles on which this entire vision, coherence, synthesis for the common man is based on truth and non-violence, all right? We understood his idea of truth, which he equates truths with God. He talks of relative truth, he talks of absolute truth, and he talks of non-violence, ahimsa, okay? So he is talking of both these principles to achieve Swaraj, right? Then we will be talking of his concept of power, his concept of power. So he has problem and he is speculative of all forms of power, be it political power, be it economic power. Because before talking of the tendencies of centralization and decentralization, this centralization and decentralization is of power only. So first we will be talking of his concept of power. So he is very troubled with both political and economic power, all right? And he says why? Because power creates violence in society. And any structure of society, if it has to be peaceful, right, it cannot be on the basis of violence. So if our ends are non-violent, means also have to be non-violent. So this continuity between means and ends is there in his idea of power, okay? And what are the embodiments of power, right? So that he will be talking of. Then the next idea we will be talking of, that he will talking of the concept of democracy. He talks of the concept of democracy. So he criticizes Western democracies, okay? Because in West, what has happened? Democracy has got equated with party rule, and this is very problematic. So democracy, which means rule of the people, right? That should be there, all right? It should not be a majority principle, but welfare of all people, right? It should be for the benefit. So just like Vivekananda and, right, in this sense, he is saying that democracy is where it is rule of the people, and we should not focus on the majority principle. We have to focus on the welfare of all. So he talks about Sarvodaya, benefit of everybody, and not only majority principle, not only associated with what? Party rule. Is this concept being linked? So how we talk of the cardinal principles, then we talk about the concept of Swaraj, then we talk of the concept of power, then we linked how power has to be decentralized. So form of government, right? So that is democracy. Then the next idea is his problem with the centralization of power as a philosophy. So he says the centralization of power is very problematic. If we really want to achieve the principle of voluntary cooperation in society, right, then what we will have to do? We will have to seek decentralization. And he seeks this decentralization at all levels, and that's why he talks of the concept of Gram Swaraj and Panchayati Raj. So we brought in the principle of Sarvodaya, we brought in the principle of Swaraj, we spoke about his view on democracy, we spoke about his speculation and skepticism, towards the concept of political and economic power, right? So he talks of this decentralization of and at the level of the Panchayati Raj. Why at the level of Panchayati Raj? What does Panchayati Raj do? Okay, so it is Panchayati Raj where people, okay, the power will not be in the form of pyramid, where the bottom is sustaining the apex. It is in the form of oceanic circles. Why so? Because he says that individual here in the villages, everybody is guided by spirit of cooperation, voluntary cooperation, togetherness, shared commonness, and that is why this individual here is ready to submit himself for the whole, for the welfare of the common good. And slowly when all individuals feel that the whole is more important than us, then automatically this entire Gram Swaraj, it will become self-rule of the people at this democratic level, at the level of the Panchayat. That's why he is talking of the decentralization. If we centralize, we control power. If we decentralize, we give that power, we enshrine that power on the people. Okay? Now, so here are the aspects in this context we are talking of the political form. Now let's see what he is talking on the economic form of power. So economic power, he is criticizing what? He is criticizing modernity and modern civilization. And he is also having problem with this industrialization of big machines. He is having problem with private property also, but he agrees that this institution will not go, right? We will have to do something about it. So we can allow if it is lawfully done. So he doesn't become radical in this, even if he is not very happy with it, all right? But he says, okay, if it is acquired with lawful men, fine. But he has problem with industrialization, he has problem with modernity. What it has led to? It has led to capitalism and maximization of wants, right? Rather than minimization of wants. And it is troubling the labor class, right? Those people who would have got employment. So he says what? He says that we should have this kind of, everybody should enjoy some form of labor. Nobody should be unemployed, because only labor is the most productive activity even for Gandhiji. So when you do industrialization, you are taking away this labor, right, from an individual, his idea of creation. So it is very problematic. So he also is critical of the economic power. This also needs to decentralize. How it will decentralize? Small industries, and at the level of Panchayat, people will develop self-sustaining villages. Okay, so he focuses on this kind of a model, even for the economic power. Thus, what is his solution? If a society has to build on the principle of non-violence, what is Gandhiji's solution for this? Obviously, he talks about Panchayati Raj, he talks of decentralization of economy. So he gives a vision. He gives the vision of Ram Rajya. And what is this Ram Rajya? Here also add in the concept that he talks of trusteeship. So rather than reconciling class conflict with what? Or inequalities with revolution or violent means, we should have trusteeship. Because trusteeship brings what element? Trusteeship brings a change of heart, the change of spirit of individuals, where they are ready to give the extra and there is some sort of a redistribution mechanism, right? So that is also not forced. So he talks of Ram Rajya. Now what is this Ram Rajya? This is actually the vision, or the administration, the good conduct, the justice, the monogamy that was there, which shows self-restraint in the Lord Rama's era. Okay, so similarly, every society should be guided by such kind of what? Virtues. Virtues and characteristic like justice, like good conduct, like good administration, right? Like self-restraint, Lord Rama had monogamy. So Ram Rajya is that. But is this a state? So he says his ideal state has no state. It is a stateless society. So he is building society on non-violent form. Stateless society without any army, without any navy, without any police force. People come together to protect themselves. So it is anarchist state, which means there is no state actually existing, right? And how will we conclude this? So it is where people are, based on the principle of self-sacrifice, discipline, goodness, working for the others. So it is rule of such kind of enlightened individuals in Ram Rajya. So we don't need a state. This is his idea of ideal state, which means there is no state, there is a stateless society, okay? Because then otherwise society will be built on force, on violence. And thus we say that how truth and non-violence have reconciled in all the principles of Gandhiji. Right? And he brings in what? He brings in this through change in heart of individuals rather than any forced approach. So, change in heart and combining that spirit of spiritual versus material by this change in heart. This is how we conclude. So, we brought in all the ideas and we linked truth and non-violence and decentralization of power with every idea. This is the art of answer writing, okay, right? So question addressed, where we started with truth and non-violence, we are ending also with that, all right? Come, let's get a recap. So Gandhiji's objective is to what? Is to transform the individual and society simultaneously in accordance with principles of truth and non-violence. So truth and non-violence are the cardinal principles of Gandhian thoughts, right? So relative truth is what? Truthfulness in word and deed, and the absolute truth is the ultimate reality, okay? Ultimate truth is what? God itself, and morality, and the moral laws and code is its basis. Then he says non-violence is active love, which is opposite of violence, all right? Non-violence or love is regarded as the highest law of human kind. Then he talks about Swaraj, individual self-rule. Well, individual is the master of himself, fine? And power is problematic. Power is a limitation on the capacity to seek Swaraj internally also, okay? So he gives a view on power. What does he say? Power resides in the people. Like Aurobindo and Vivekananda, he transcended this majority principle and pursued welfare of all. That's why he gives Sarvodaya, all right? Gandhiji is suspicious of all forms of power, political and economic. That's why he talks of decentralization of power. So he is giving a moral argument. Centralization is destroying man's urge to see his own Swaraj. That's why, because it increases violence. Decentralization induces people to realize their responsibility and be non-violent, all right? And future of civilization and its progress is based on the reduced use of violence. Then he talks on democracy. So he says that it is not about institutions and laws. Democracy is what? About the substantive aspect, all right? And what is this substantive aspect? That weakest should have same opportunity as the strongest, okay? Then Panchayat Raj he talks of, okay? How every village is a republic, how it is guided by value of voluntary cooperation, how Panchayat Raj has full powers to make villages self-sustained and capable of managing its affairs, all right? So he talks of the pyramid versus the oceanic circle of power. On concentration of economic power also he has problem. He rejects private property, but then he says if it is acquired through lawful means, it is okay, right? And he talks that modern civilization has made man very materialistic. He argues in favor of trusteeship by converting men of property into trusteeship, all right? Then ideal state, his ideal state is Ram Rajya, which is rule of selfless individuals, and they have characteristic like in the kingdom of Lord Ram, that kind of virtues. Virtues like what? noble conduct, justice, truth, self-restraint, good administration, and a stateless society. Okay? So by change of heart and connecting spiritual values and material conditions, okay, and decentralization of economic political power is a corollary of change of hearts. Both have to go together. All right? So he hoped to produce a new individual as well as a new society. What does he say? If man is trained with truth and non-violence, man will transform material conditions for the good of all. Okay, now let's move to the next question. Next question is Dr. B.R. Ambedkar as a social revolutionary. B.R. Ambedkar. B.R. Ambedkar as a social revolutionary. So, what is the idea of social revolution for Ambedkar? Okay, so he says that we really cannot achieve a nation, we cannot achieve a modern nation, we cannot achieve a complete or all-round democracy until there are social inequalities which are prevalent. Social inequalities. So we have to address this. So on what dimensions we say that Ambedkar is a social revolutionary? So he talks of on anti-casteism. Okay? So he says how caste is distinguishing one man from the other on the basis of worth, and how Brahminical religion is trying to provide such kind of a skewed view towards the depressed classes. Okay? So he says that Manusmriti should not be existing and providing that kind of structure of society. And that's why he says caste is a problem which is there in the Hindu structure. Hindu religion supports it. Brahmins are propagating this kind of a structure in society where man is not treated like a man. Okay? So the whole human dignity concept is lost, and that's why he becomes a crusader for the depressed classes against anti-casteism. And what is he propagating in that regard? What kind of social revolution? So he says there should be inter-caste marriages which should be allowed. Then which other dimension of social revolution he is talking? His concept of social justice, which means it has to be, social justice has to be in which format? So until it takes a legal form in the and recognition of rights by the state, right, it will not be complete. So in the constitution he brings in that kind of a value where the depressed classes who have been historically treated. So he also brings in what? Difference principle within the constitution that way. Affirmative action, reservation, all right, in his concept of social justice. Then he talks about women's rights. He talks on women's rights. How women should get rights to do political participation. So he is a social revolutionary by criticism of caste, by criticism of Hindu religion. How he talks of Buddhism as a key religion which provides such kind of equality and reduces inequalities, right? Second, his concept of social justice, how he brings in social justice. And third, what he talks of women's rights. Okay? So let's just recap Ambedkar's view. So he is a savior of downtrodden masses who have been what? Subject to utter humiliation. And his main contribution is to the Indian society to bring out the depressed community out of degradation and subjugation. All right? So he is considered as a social reformer, an uplifter of the downtrodden sections, crusader against orthodoxy and rigid mold of casteism. Okay? And he brought in an era of social justice. So first he talks of the anti-caste system which has led to exploitation and perpetuation of inequality in society. This is because of the Varna system, and how Brahmins enjoy the supreme position, and how misinterpretation of religion is leading to such kind of inequalities. Thus he embraced Buddhism. All right? and he talks of the evils of caste system in detail. Then how he is a champion of social justice, how he did eradication of untouchability within the constitution, all right, and how he is also a crusader of women rights, how he safeguarded women from perpetual discrimination, all right. He also pointed towards how the civil code was very ineffective, right, and that's why there is need for a uniform civil code. He spoke about this also, that's why the Hindu Code Bill. And he suggested that religious consciousness and strengthening the caste and class system should be destroyed completely. So we need a social revolution in this regard. All right, for this he suggested intercaste marriages. So he demands equal rights, safeguard against differential behavior, and new code as a substitute of Manu Smriti. So in this way he was a social revolutionary, okay. So you have to point out the dimensions on which he is talking about this social revolution. Is it understood? Okay. So done with day 17 and Indian political thought today. I hope you've understood Gandhi well, the question also. Reread and see how interlinkages are made when questions are very open-ended. Okay, it was a question on comment. Fine. So I hope you learned a lot today. We'll start from Indian government and politics tomorrow. Thank you so much. All the best.